Dungeons & Dragons has reached an all-time popularity. Between streamers promoting and playing the game, an accessible and fun current rule set, and D&D being featured in hit shows like Stranger Things, the game has become a household name. It has a huge range of types of experiences now, from horror adventures like The Curse of Strahd, urban heists like Waterdeep Dragon Heist, or fun giant-filled adventures like in Storm King's Thunder. You can find all of these and more D&D products at the Baltimore County Public Library. However, behind all the fun of the game, D&D has actually had a rocky past. The game's history is filled with amazing stories, corporate shenanigans, and generally, a lot of drama. Did you know that Wizards of the Coast didn't always own Dungeons & Dragons? Wizards purchased the rights to D&D in 1997 from TSR, Tactical Studies Rules. D&D was co-created by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson in 1974 and was published by TSR, a company Gary created. TSR started in Gary Gygax's home in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, and the first printing was only 150 copies. The game was popular, and follow-up prints were done, with demand increasing for the game with each reprint. Games up to that point had been primarily military simulations, but D&D offered something different. D&D allowed players to do something no game had really attempted before: roleplay as another person. The game's structure was less strict than games had been up to that point. It allowed you to explore and interact with interesting creatures, fight, and gather treasure. A fun detail about the creation of the game: many people assume Lord of the Rings was a big inspiration. However, while Dave Arneson was a big Lord of the Rings fan, Gary Gygax hated Lord of the Rings, finding it incredibly boring. Instead, he was motivated by pulp fantasy works like Conan the Barbarian, and this can be seen in a lot of the sword and sorcery vibes early D&D had. Despite the popularity of the game, Dave Arneson was pushed out from further creation of D&D. Gary Gygax argued Dave Arneson's rules largely didn't make the final draft that was selling. Gygax thought his own work was far more essential to the game and was tired of working with Arneson. The pair settled out of court, with Arneson getting royalties for every copy of D&D that sold. Eventually, TSR split D&D into two rule systems: D&D Basic, which was a good entry point into the game and still paid royalties to Arneson, and D&D Advance, which had a much more robust rule set and was created entirely without Arneson, so those products didn't give him royalties. You can guess which version TSR tended to publish the most of. Fast forward 10 years, it's 1985. Gary Gygax has gone from a part-time town cobbler struggling financially to being in charge of TSR, a multi-million-dollar company. He lives in California, where he is trying to get Hollywood involved with D&D. However, back in Wisconsin, TSR is struggling. A series of bad investments, poor management, and odd production choices has left TSR nearing bankruptcy. While Gygax returns to slow the sinking of his company, he is eventually pushed out from the company in a moment fans know as the ambush at Sheridan Springs. Control of the company shifted to Lorraine Williams. Fans who want to know more about the rise and fall of Gary Gygax should consider reading Empire of Imagination by Michael Whitwer. It follows the creation of D&D, TSR, and the decisions and moments that led to Gygax losing control of the company. However, TSR's story isn't finished there. While Lorraine Williams has been much maligned by generations of nerds for removing the father of D&D from his creation, under her leadership, TSR was saved from bankruptcy. From 1985 to 1997, TSR released a slew of fan-favorite products, including Dungeons & Dragons 2nd Edition, the Forgotten Realms setting, and D&D's line of fiction novels, with Dragonlance and The Legend of Drizzt being the most popular, and many breathtaking pieces of artwork that fans still rave about today. However, by the mid-90s, the company was struggling again. Mismanagement, new industry competition, poor development, and investments had hurt TSR's finances over and over again. While the ins and outs are too complicated to cover here, TSR was in trouble, and then rendered completely inoperable due to the specifics in its publishing deal with Random House and its printers. Months away from closing the doors, TSR was purchased in 1997 by Wizards of the Coast, where the game remains to this day. While the game has continued to develop and change under D&D 3rd, 4th, and now 5th editions, the stories of those eras of D&D are still waiting to be told. Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons & Dragons, a new book by Ben Briggs, does an amazing job following the successes and failures of TSR, taking a good look at the company after Gary Gygax left. I particularly enjoyed the ways it followed more than just game developers, also tracking TSR's book department and art departments. If you would rather follow the history of D&D through its amazing artwork, I highly recommend Dungeons & Dragons Art and Arcana, which gives a highlight reel of some of the best artwork to come out of D&D. For more D&D info and products available through the Baltimore County Public Library, check out BCPL.info. Thanks for watching.